The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys.
I'm Nikki Butler, and I'm a regional manager for STCU. My lunch buddy is Nicole.
I'm Brandy Schloss. I'm a regional manager at STCU. My lunch buddy is Angelina. She's grown up with me. I've grown up with her. To see her graduate will be a lot of fun.
Brandy and I have been lunch buddies since the girls were in second grade. It's great that STCU provides me with the opportunity to be part of Reach for the Future. We are committed to the children. We're committed to our community. I'm Nikki.
I'm Brandy.
And STCU is here for good.
This is River Ridge Frame Shop, called Frame It Today, where we can take your art, customize it, and get it ready to hang on the wall. Here at River Ridge Hardware, 2803 West Garland.
Welcome to the region's only public safety radio talk show. It's time again for the Sheriff's Report, your weekly radio call from Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich, now in its third year on the air.
Radio base to the Sheriff. Come in, Sheriff.
Well, good afternoon, morning, whatever time it is you're watching this, since it plays all the time anymore. For those of you who are listening to this over the radio, I've realized a little glitch in some of my presentations is I'm showing, since this is taped and we have video, I showed my 1022 at the last show. And for those of you who don't know what a 1022, it's a 22 rifle. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more explicit when I talk. In studio with me, I have Robin Ball, and Robin is the owner of Sharpshooting. If you really want to, Robin, I get a lot of ladies ask me about wanting to learn how to shoot, what gun to choose. I send them your direction because you have classes that are really good and really built around that. Today, Robin and I are going to talk about my favorite topic anymore, 1639.
It's an everyday topic.
It is. And folks, I warned you. I told you that this doesn't go away. Robin, I'm being called by Democrats from across the state concerned about their gun rights now. And it's almost as if the citizens of Washington are waking up after an all-nighter, hungover, going, I did what?
Exactly.
And your perspective, I think, is needed on this topic because a lot of people are asking me questions about when can I buy a gun? What does this mean that I have to have this class before I can purchase a semi-automatic rifle? What's this? Every 5 years I've got to do this? And well, yeah, that's kind of what this law says. So, from your perspective, what does 1639 mean to somebody in your business?
Well, to start with, the age restrictions already gone into effect. That happened January 1st. The rest of it doesn't hit until July 1st. But right now, we can't sell a long gun that is a semi-automatic to anybody under the age of 21. So they're still eligible to buy a shotgun. That wasn't part of the the initiative, they're
Now,
still
that
eligible.
was a question I had
Okay.
the other day was, what about my semi-automatic shotgun? I went, good question.
Right now, the language doesn't cover some automatic shotguns, but you can buy a bolt action. There are precision rifle shooters. That's pretty much what they shoot. So under that age, you can still buy a bolt action. The semi-automatic, though, no longer. Now, that does not stop someone from going across the state line. And for us, it's a restriction to commerce issue, being legal 30 miles east of us, but not legal in the state of Washington. And there are dealers on both the Oregon border and on the Idaho border who are fighting this just based on laws of commerce.
When you say that, there's been a lawsuit that's been filed.
Correct.
You're part of that lawsuit.
Yes.
Explain to the folks what that lawsuit pertains, because it's a commerce issue that you're fighting under, but are there any other angles that the lawsuit is also attacking the law on?
We started out with the age issue and not being able to sell under the age of 21. And the reason that it started there is because that's the piece that went into effect already. So that is the piece that we're working on. We're gathering data. We're talking to dealers to find out what it's costing them in sales, and then going forward what they would anticipate annual cost of sales decrease to be. There are some border retailers who have 30 or 40% of their traffic coming from out of state that could legally buy within the state of Washington. So it's a pretty big economic hit to some of the dealers. That's where it started. So we have been recording younger adults who may not be aware that they can no longer purchase a semi-automatic. We're recording that data showing that we've had to deny a sale. There's no enforcement anywhere, though. So the reality is...
No, that's an important statement, because people are
and
going...
I've done some research on this.
I have nothing to enforce here.
Right. You actually don't. And in the long run, even in Spokane County, you likely wouldn't because of the contract with the city of Spokane. So the only way right now anybody in law enforcement would know if I sold to someone under the age of 21 is if that 21-year-old took that gun out and did something illegal with it, was arrested, tracked it back to us as a dealer.
And what's the ramifications if that were to happen?
Revocation of our license, potentially.
Because everything I've read, there's actually no criminal penalty that, like I would go and arrest you for that. It's a civil penalty. You
Correct.
lose your license.
Correct. Yes. But right now, a gun misuse is the only way you're going to find that out, because there's no record keeping requirement for the dealer to the state to report that transaction. That is being developed. That's supposed to be ready by July 1st, but Department of Licensing says we're not funded for this, so we don't have the ability to develop new paperwork.
And I think that people might not understand why DOL would say that. The reason they say that, folks, is purely simply this. They're 3 years behind on their mental health checks on gun records, 3 years. They aren't funded for this. This basically is an unfunded mandate, and the plan is, I guess, to pay for these costs by charging an extra $25. You don't have enough revenue even at that to do this. So for you right now, it's an economic issue for all the gun dealers.
Correct.
What about the training courses?
Well, we don't know what that looks like yet. We know that that'll be a mandated issue beginning July 1st. We don't know if Washington State Patrol's been put in charge of developing that training curriculum. Initially, it was supposed to be a combination of law enforcement and a citizens organization and firearms instructors, which I begged and pleaded to get on that committee, but I haven't been contacted. So we don't know if it's, an 8-hour class, if it's a 16-hour class. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know if there's even a live fire portion involved. And we don't know who they're going to allow to instruct yet.
common theme of this particular initiative or now law is nobody knows. Safe storage, for example.
Right.
In your reading and study of this, what does that truly mean?
There's no way to infer what the definition is in 1639. We're told that the legislature will clean that language up and clearly define it. Logically, I think that if you have your house locked and someone breaks in and steals your gun, you should not be responsible, but I don't know that logic is going to play into the way they define safe storage. And we already know that if a gun is not safely stored and it gets into the wrong hands, the way we find that out is it's been misused, whether a child gets a hold of it or a criminal breaks into your house. It's also my understanding that there's going to be a legal requirement of the gun owner to report a gun stolen within a certain period of time.
5 days.
But if you're on vacation, do you necessarily know that?
The law is specific in that portion in that it's 5 days from the time that you become aware that the weapon's been stolen. So if you're on vacation, come back, and let's say, because we don't always look at all our guns every single day, let's say a month later you find out, something's missing here, something's amiss. My gun, it's not here.
Right.
5 days from that moment is when you have to report, or you can face criminal penalties.
Right.
And if you read the Inlander article, which I have some issues with, I hate having words put in my mouth, especially when I tell reporters don't do that.
Right.
If you read that article, they actually contacted the AG's office, and this is straight from the AG's office, at least per the Inlander. That language was specifically made vague so the prosecutors can decide, what safe storage is. They can. I'm like, okay, how does that work? Yeah, it means in King County, where somebody's very, very on the far progressive liberal side, is going to determine safe storage this way. Somebody in Spokane County may determine safe storage this way. Where's the equal protection under the law, which, quite frankly, is demanded of laws?
Right. Yeah, no equal protection for sure. And we know also that King County for many years has been pushing to eliminate Washington State's preemption law, which says a local jurisdiction can't pass a law stricter than that of the state, but King County wants to, and we saw them kind of go down that path a number of years ago with Mayor Nichols when he decided that you couldn't have a gun on city property, but not controllable. And the AG at the time wrote Mayor Nichols a letter and said, you can't do this, you're in violation of preemption. It did eventually get challenged and thrown out. But they're picking away at our gun rights. And 1639 is a really good example with the title of Safe Schools, Safe Communities.
Which it had nothing to do with safe schools,
if voters just read that, sounds like a great idea. Don't we all want safe schools for our kids and grandkids?
That was thrown at me at one point, and I went, thing is, folks, this has nothing to do with safety of anything.
Right.
Point blank, 1639 did one thing and one thing only. It created a definition of a object that does not exist.
Yes.
There is no such thing as an assault weapon. And folks, I say that definitively. I was in the United States Army. At no time was my rifle called an assault weapon. It was called a rifle.
Right.
And that was a fully automatic rifle. No such thing as an assault weapon. It looks like the scary AR-15 that all the progressives like to show and go, this is evil. The reality is that law, that initiative, created a definition of something that doesn't exist, and they did it to ban semi-automatic rifles, all semi-automatic rifles, not the scary AR-15. Like you said, if you weren't paying attention to this, you would, because that's the gun that they showed on all the screens and all their ads, this is what we're banning, folks. No, you banned every single semi-automatic to include the 22 that I have carried for 40 years, small game hunting, is now an assault weapon.
Right.
Why did they do that? It's simple. The next phase is this, folks. They are coming after your guns. They are going to first ban the sale of them, and then they are going to ban them. This is what it's all about. Make no doubt, no different. There's no debate on this. This is where they are going.
That is for sure, and they've been working their way chunk by chunk to get there. And under 1639 will have long gun registration that in reality, if DOL comes out with a new form, then that information will get transferred from the dealer to the state of Washington, as it does with handguns.
In triplicate.
In triplicate. And as you know, DOL is years behind in processing that paperwork. Their new electronic system allows them to keep up with more current information coming in. And if they have an extra 5 minutes, then they go back into that paper backlog that they've got that we know is 3 years old. Every once in a while, they mail something back to us that has a date on it that's 3 or 4 years old. So we can tell how far behind they are. This is going to add an additional burden to the local check system, and it's going to add an additional burden to departmental licensing and Department of Social and Health Services. But their goal, the end game, is gun registration, a record of who owns every serial number that passes through Washington State. And that is what we're after, is a total registry of firearms.
Yes. So, again, some people are probably thinking, and Robin, it's amazing. I have spoke on this topic 5 times this week alone. I was summoned to the Ag Convention to speak about this issue. The Ag Convention, mind you. Stacked
Awesome.
room. Standing room only. Probably, I'd say almost 80 to 90 people there. And they all had the same question is, what does this truly mean? How do we stop this? And I'm like, folks, that cart, it already went down the road. The only thing that I can think, if people are truly this upset, and trust me, it seems that they are. One of my press conferences we put out, I think, has 85,000 views in 2 days. A repeal of this law is the only answer. And, all you Democrats that are continually calling me, maybe it's time that you step up and, a coalition is formed and you do exactly what the left just did. You do the same and you repeal this law. This is not about safety. If this was about safety, I would have signed off on it immediately, because, I truly believe we need to tighten up our background checks, which means we need to fund these entities so we actually have real-time backgrounds, not 3 years later.
Right, exactly.
But there are certain aspects. Talk about the medical aspect as far as your medical records, because every time I read that, I go, okay, does it really say what I think it says?
It does. And unfortunately, there is state precedent out there already, because if you have purchased a handgun and filled out the Washington State application to transfer, that same language is on the handgun form. And we know that that's been broadened a little bit without changing the language of what you're signing. And it didn't used to happen that it went through Department of Social and Health Services. People are concerned that it's going to give Department of Licensing or Department of Social and Health Services, or whoever is delegated to do that check, instant access to all medical records. And it's not. It's going to be what the state has currently. But it is a step in that direction where everything is available. Right now under HIPAA, there are still some restrictions, but it is taking longer. We know that locally, police records is getting their portion of the background check done in an efficient, timely manner, and then it gets sent on to Olympia to Department of Social and Health Services, and they can't get it done under the 10-day period. I mean, we are delaying transactions because we can't get an approval back from the state. And it used to be we could release if we didn't have the information back in time. But the law says unless otherwise notified. And we've been notified by law enforcement that we have to wait for an approval.
Now, is that every 5 years?
Well, right now it's not. A CPL is renewed every 5 years, so they do get an opportunity to look at you again every 5 years if you've got a license. But under the new law, it's supposed to be kind of a renewal every 5 years where they get to run that same background check and mental health check on you again. Okay.
Because, again, there's a lot of nuances to this. It's 30 pages of law. Mm-hmm. I think for a lot of people, it's kind of overwhelming. Right. To actually dive into it and have to digest it. You know, there's a section that I'm rereading again that it mentions yearly. That there's a part of this that you every year is going to have to be reviewed, and I'm like, how does that happen? I mean,
so we know some states show very high national instant check system numbers because they take their database and run it back through the NICS system, through the federal system. NICS is trying to withdraw some of that access for states in doing that annually, but it explains why Alabama shows they sell more guns than anybody else. We know that those are inflated numbers because they're rerunning annually all those checks that go through.
Okay. As this next phase comes into be, because you said phase 1 started immediately at the first of the year, 18 and under, or 18 to 20 can't purchase. It doesn't say they can't possess.
Correct.
They can possess just like a handgun. Because I had an interesting phone call, and this individual was upset and said, "If I see an 18-year-old with an AR, I better how am I going to confiscate it? The law says that under these parameters, that 18-year-old can still have that AR.
They can.
And I think a lot of people didn't get that. I think it was another part of the people who passed these initiatives. They weren't honest with people. They went, well, they're not going to be able to have them. No, folks, 18-year-olds to 20-year-olds still can have an AR-15.
Correct.
So July 1st,
mm-hmm.
What further complications do you face come July 1st? Training classes are going to be one of them.
The mandatory training, though we don't know what that looks like yet, that'll be definitely a big piece of it. It will have to require another set of documents that get filled out by the buyer so that background check is completed. We also know that pending, and it has been delayed, but pending, the NICS system, the National Instant Check System, has said to Washington State, we're not going to be your partial point of contact anymore. So,
that's pretty devastating.
It is devastating to anybody who's got a concealed pistol license and thinks they can walk out the door with the gun. That'll no longer happen. All paperwork is going to have to go to local jurisdictions. So Spokane Police Records is going to get buried. And that was supposed to go into effect October 1st, but it got delayed because Department of Licensing said, no, we can't handle that. Do not do that to us yet. Let us gear up for it. We think that's going to hit July 1st also. Everything I've read so far from the State Patrol has said that'll hit July 1st as well. So we'll have that change in background checks, plus the additional rifle background checks that we've just called NICS on and haven't dealt with local jurisdiction. All of that comes in state where your agencies are going to have to handle it.
And I can tell you that we are not funded or staffed to do that. That will be a tidal wave.
Yes, it will be a tidal wave.
It will swamp police records.
Yes. And even if, it would require remodeling that office because it's not like they have unlimited space available to add more people to it. So it'll be a nightmare for many agencies to deal with in the state of Washington.
Any good news concerning any of this at all?
I would love to find some, but Olympia is in session, and that's not ever good for gun owners. So right now we're watching a long list of anti-gun legislation being proposed. We don't know how much of it will pass yet. We have some speculations about what will get through and what won't, but people need to stay engaged with their elected officials and keep on top, if they can, of the 1,700 and almost 80 bills proposed this year, because they will all impact all of us at some level. Even if you're not a gun owner, if you work for somebody, you're going to be impacted. If you get a paycheck, you're going to be impacted.
Yes. We have about a minute left. Why don't you tell folks about the business and the fact that you do have classes that if you want to learn how to safely handle a firearm, you can come there?
You can go to our website at sharpshooting.net and click on the calendar link, and it will show you what days classes are being offered. And if you want that class description, you can click on that date and look at it and see if there are seats open. In our basic classes, both our Women and Guns class and our handgun class, we provide all of the gear. So we have people call and say, should I buy a gun first? It's like, I wouldn't recommend doing that because you don't know yet what you like. So we will provide everything. You can come in as a brand new shooter. Brand new shooters are my favorite because they don't have bad habits, and get started in the right direction.
All right. Well, folks, next week, we're going to be talking about 1639 again, and we're going to run down exactly what the law says. I'm working on a presentation for you so you can actually see it. And some of the things that, the yes for 1639 have said about and got you to vote for it and why it was not true. Rob mentions the laws that are currently being weighed. I attended a meeting last Saturday. A lobbyist from Olympia was talking. They say that the only gun law that they can see coming out right now is going to be the banning of high-capacity magazines. They think that they can get that one done. So that's the next step in the anti-gun movement towards the total confiscation of semi-automatic rifles. Sheriff, I am always asked, Sheriff, where does this stop? Well, it stops when the people of Washington step up and say you've had enough.
Right.
When you stop listening to people that sell initiatives, because the state Supreme Court in about 2006 did the greatest disservice there is. They said you can lie during a campaign. Well, that's what happens. You don't get the straight facts. Well, next week we're going to dive into some of the facts. You are not in the grip of gun violence in this nation. Gun violence has actually gone down over the last 25 years. This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich with the Sheriff's Report. Have a great day.
The Sheriff's Report is a joint production of Spokane Talks Media and KTW 630 AM and 96.5 FM, which are solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, or watch this program again anytime at SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Have a safe day.